Hello, ASL community. Today's episode is a little bit different. This comes from the Texas area from an interpreting student there named Ron, and he asked me to discuss something related to his project. So I said that was fine, and we were talking about it and discussing it, and that got me thinking that some of you may be really interested in ASL and delving deeper into the different aspects of ASL. You might want to get your geek on, so to speak, in relation to that. So let's do it. Today I want to discuss ASL turn taking from two different perspectives. One is from the conversational perspective, and one is from the interpreting perspective, and how two parties know when it's time to take their turn and when it's time to stop talking. And how do you notice when it's time to take your turn? And something called ASL prosody is going to help you determine that. And ASL prosody, from my understanding anyway, includes all of your facial expressions, your eyebrows, the way that your eyes move, everything about how your face moves, as well as your pauses. And it also includes your body language. And all of that put together helps to show the flow of your language. And that's prosody. So it's like the rhythm of your language. So ASL prosody has many, many different features, but today we're just going to focus on two of them. And before I discuss these two features, in any conversational discourse, any communication at all, whether it's conversation or interpreting, there needs to be at least two parties involved. Maybe there's 3, 4, 5 people talking, but there needs to be at least two. And I will discuss both perspectives. First, I'm going to talk about the listener, the person who's not signing, the person who's watching the signer. I'm going to be discussing their perspective, and then I'll also be discussing the signer's perspective. So first we'll be discussing the listener's perspective, and this is the person who's not signing. Again, they're going to be watching the listener, or watching the signer, excuse me, and they're going to do that by their eye gaze. And they're going to notice the signer's eye gaze. And if the listener is looking all around, they're not looking at the signer, the listener will know by the signer's eye gaze that they're not finished talking yet because they're looking around. They're going to want to say more. They're going to want to continue talking. But once their eye gaze is held and focused on the listener, then that means that they're ready to take their turn. Or they want to see if something is clear, or there's something that they're trying to convey through their eye gaze. So now the signer notices the listener's hands, and the position of their hands will determine whether or not they want to say something, whether or not they're waiting to take a turn. If their hands are down, then that means that they're just listening and following along with the conversation. They don't want to say anything. But if their hands are up, then that means they want to say something. And if they continue to leave their hands up, that means that they're trying to get a word in, and that the speaker should know that, and that it's time to switch turns. So again, we talked about eye gaze and we talked about hand positioning. And we talked about that in relation to conversation. Now we're going to apply it to interpreting. You already know that most of the time interpreters don't tend to do a lot of turn taking. They hear the English and then they put it out in ASL most of the time. But in the last 10 years or so, there's been more and more video relay services, interpreters. And that type of interpreting relies very heavily on turn taking. So if I'm the interpreter and I just hear the English and I put it out there in ASL, that's not a very good example for the deaf consumer because they won't know when to take their turn. So how do I kind of convey that to them, to the deaf consumer? How do they know whether or not the hearing person's still speaking and it's not time for them to take their turn yet? It's the same thing. I need to use my eyes. So if the hearing person is still speaking, the interpreter is still signing, the deaf person will know that because the interpreter's eye gaze is all over the place. Another thing is their hand positioning. If the hearing person is still speaking but the interpreter's not signing, or if the interpreter's hands are down, then that means that the hearing person's done speaking. Or if the interpreter keeps their hands up, the deaf person knows that the hearing person's probably still speaking and it's not time to take their turn yet. Or if the deaf person sees the interpreter's eyes still shifting around, that means that they're still going to be signing and that they should still be looking for information. And the same thing with the deaf person. If the deaf person is still signing and still talking, it's important to let the hearing person know. But we're not really going to focus on that with voicing so much. With English prosody, we're focusing more on ASL today. So anyway, the point is, there's a lot of different features when it comes to ASL prosody that I've noticed in relation to turn taking. You know, when is it my turn? Was it your turn? So one of the major things is eye gaze, and the other thing is hand positioning. Whether your hands are up or down. I hope that was helpful. And I hope that you enjoyed the vlog today. I have new ones periodically, so if you want to look for the new vlogs, you can, or you can email me, give me feedback, or you can go on my website and get my email address from there. And it's always a pleasure.